Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today.
What up, what up? Welcome on into a bonus edition of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. I'm Justin Hoff alongside the Baylor Bear insider Jerry Hill for a Baylor football season preview. The fellows on Inside Baylor Sports, Colt Barber and Grayson Grunhafer, they've been doing a great job breaking down everything you need to know every weekday on Inside Baylor Sports. Today we're going to take a little different look, a little under a different lens for our season preview. And you know, at the end of the day, who doesn't want more football content? We'll look at the 2024 schedule, give you a quick glance at the upcoming games for Baylor, and also discuss the great themes we have for the 2024 season and what you can expect to see at McLean Stadium this fall. Plus, we give you our 3 impact players to watch on both offense and defense and tell you what to expect to see in 2024 from Baylor football and a whole lot more. Jerry, let's get into it. First off, a lot of hype this offseason. You know, you think about the new uniforms, new offense, spread up tempo with Jake Spavital, similar to what we saw about a decade ago. Tempo, right? Dave Aranda calling the defense. He's back in the lab. You got updated enhancements at McLean Stadium, including new video boards, a new hospitality suite on the berm, a different edge about this football team. And I'll say this much, Jerry, I hope you packed the energy. I'm as excited about this season for Baylor football as I have been for any season that I can remember in recent time. I'm really excited to get out there and see the pads start to pop.
You know, and I got even more excited last week, you know, at the kickoff luncheon, the Chamber of Commerce kickoff luncheon, just got excited, you know, hearing Coach Aranda, hearing Mac Rhodes, you know, talk about the upcoming season. And I think Mac specifically talked about, you know, he had never seen a coaching staff have an off season any better than this football coaching staff. So that'll get you excited. You know, Mac's been around athletics a little bit. So, you know, he's seen what Dave Aranda and his staff have done just in terms of, you know, Dave bringing in new coaches, you know, bringing in a new offense, you know, the recruiting they've done. And then I don't remember if you mentioned it, but oh yeah, the Fudge Development Center. That's an amazing place. And that'll get you excited too. Just walking through that building and seeing all the bells and whistles in there and what an incredible facility. You need that nowadays, but man, it's top of the line what they were able to do in that facility.
Yeah, and hey, it's a new season, a lot of new players, a lot of new coaches. I mean, this is a brand new Baylor football team. So the past is behind you and you're focused on what's in front of you. And what's in front of the Baylor football team is a Saturday night matchup against Tarleton State, 6 o'clock on ESPN Plus from McLean Stadium. We've waited a long time for some football at McLean Stadium. It begins this weekend, and a really cool game, not only to play Tarleton, your season opener, but, oh, by the way, this just happens to be the 10th anniversary game, the 10th anniversary of McLean Stadium opening up. I remember that day very well because I was basically about 20 days on the job. But August 31st, 2014, Shock Linwood, of course, the first ever touchdown at McLean Stadium. Fast forward 10 years to Saturday, Jerry, against Tarleton State.
Yeah, and I remember that when I'm not going to say I remember it vividly because it was 10 years ago, but I do remember that game. And when we were looking at, you know, top 10 games at McLean Stadium, that was definitely one of them on my list because I just thought that was big. You know, first game in the new stadium, great crowd against a former Southwest Conference rival. I mean, it was a really cool day. And like you said, it was the start of what wound up being another conference championship. So, yeah, it's great. It's fun to, you know, remember that and to, you know, celebrate that as we go into season number 11 at McLean Stadium.
taking on Tarleton, who, coincidentally actually played in week 0, right? Which I have all different thoughts about that. Week 0, I think that should just be week 1, but whatever, that's for a different show. But a lot of times they'll say that teams often improve the most from game 1 to game 2. So they've already kind of had their scrimmage out there. They played against McNeese State, a close game, but they did come up victorious, entered the season top 25 in the FCS. And for Baylor, this will be their first game of the year, of course. So a new challenge. These first games, you kind of never know what you're going to see. There's no real preseason games in college football, but just excited to see new players, a lot of new faces, and the fans are going to get to know a lot of new guys this season. It starts with the quarterback, which we'll get to on a little bit different later on the show. But, Jerry, just excited to get out there and play some football, and the first game is this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of where the excitement comes from, Justin, is just there are so many new faces and new things and, the new offense and Dave taking over on deep. There's just so many new things. And there are some unknowns. You don't know for sure what this is going to be. You just kind of know. You can look at the history, you can look at the past of what they've done in this kind of offense, and what Dave has done in his past. Controlling a defense when he was at Wisconsin and LSU and other places. So these things have been successful. So now we get to see it, up close and personal in that first game against Tarleton. And Tarleton has a little bit of an edge because they have that first game under their belt. But at the same time, and I know Dave kind of, downplayed this, but Baylor has film on them. Because I believe they had maybe a new offensive or defensive coordinator. So you got to see what they have. You've got film on their guys because maybe you weren't sure what to expect from Tarleton. They did have a lot of offensive starters returning, and you got to see that in action. I know their quarterback got hurt and may not play this week, but you did get a good picture of what you can expect to see against Tarleton this Saturday.
For sure. So maybe it's a push there. Got some film. They got some rust off. But, Mason Miller was previously the offensive coordinator at Tarleton, and now he's the offensive line coach here at Baylor. So they have some inside intel a little bit. It's not as much as what it used to be with so much player movement now and just what you see with college football. So that's week 1, 6 o'clock against Tarleton on Saturday. Make it out to McLean Stadium. Weather looks pretty good as far as temperature. So it shouldn't be as hot as we've seen some of those season openers in past days. Week 2, heading out on the road to Utah, going to Rice-Eccles Stadium. Utah, of course, picked to win the Big 12 conference. This is not, though, however, a conference game because this was scheduled a couple years in advance. So this is a non-conference game here against Utah. On paper, there's a lot of people that would say maybe this is the stiffest test for Baylor on paper all season. And Jerry, of course, is a professor by trade. He does some of that work. And I joked to Jerry, this is like having a midterm in your second week. And sometimes he'd be like, professor, that's kind of jacked up, but certainly a challenge heading into Utah, a team with a lot of talent, great coaching staff, strong program, consistency, and a really good team at home.
My students would be really upset if I gave them their midterm next week. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait and do it about week 7 or 8 where they'll have their midterm. But yeah, this is a great test early in the season. And Justin, I think it kind of sets up to, what does your season look like? I mean, I'm not putting everything on this one game, but man, if you go into Utah and pull off a win there, I know it's not a conference game, but that would be a huge setup for the rest of the year because you just beat the expected conference favorite. So, I look at last year's game and we had chances to win that game. So we played Utah pretty even. I know Rising is coming back. So they've got a better situation at quarterback. So they've got some, new pieces back in, but I think that could be a really exciting game. Looking forward to, my first trip to that particular stadium. Obviously, we've been to Utah, but my first trip to Utah Stadium.
Yeah, I know it gets loud. They're going to be a lot of fun. A good litmus test for Baylor early on in the season. Week 2, September 7th, 2:30 Central Time. That's on Big Fox. So looking forward to that in week 2. Week 3, back here at McLean Stadium, taking on Air Force. Last time we saw them, we played them in the coldest game on record ever in a bowl game when it was frigid, sub-zero temperatures. I think I had about 8 layers on the sidelines for that game. Thankfully, this one, though, will be played in Waco, Texas in September. So, it's going to be probably 90 plus, 6:30 game, FS1. This is going to be an exciting game. It's also the Salute to Service Family Weekend Mission Black Ops game, and also the reunion game for the 1974 Southwest Conference champions. Of course, you can watch that film, The Miracle on the Brazos, on Baylor Plus right now. It's 56 minutes. I watched it 3 times. It's got like 10 plus interviews, Grant Taff in there. It's so good to relive that 1974 season. So a lot of stuff, pageantry, traditions, a lot of stuff going around this game, Jerry. But on the field, this is a game where Baylor looks to, I'm sure remembers that game from a couple years ago, and looks to come back and get a W here.
Yeah, I think that's got to resonate, particularly with guys that were around, like a Matt Jones, that were around then and played in that game actually. So yeah, I think they would like to get that bad taste out of their mouth as well as the bad taste from last year. So I think that is a really good early test. You mentioned the midterm exam for Utah. I would say this is a really good early test for the Bears to play against a good Air Force team, basically in a bowl game every year. I know they go to the Armed Forces Bowl a lot, but this is a really good, they're capable of winning double digits every year. So a good early test for the Bears. I do like that we're honoring that 74 team. I've had a chance to talk with several of them as well, and that's been a lot of fun, man. Those guys, 50 years later, Justin, there's 60 plus players coming back for that reunion. That's incredible when you're talking about guys that played here 50 years ago, and there's that many of them coming back. That's going to be an exciting weekend.
Yeah, they bleed the green and gold, and I heard as many as 75 today. Got an update, so even more trickling in. And yeah, if you haven't seen that film just yet, go on BaylorPlus.com, check it out. The Miracle on the Brazos, really, really strong. But to your point, Jerry, Utah, they're 12th right now in the AP poll. So you got a top 15 showdown on the road. Air Force, a team last year that got off to a really strong start. They got as high as number 17 in the polls. And so Air Force, a really strong program, always consistent. They're going to be a team that you're going to have to beat, right? They're not going to beat themselves, and they run that triple option. And it's a great game for defenders to pick up some tackles. And so some opportunities there for Baylor in week number 3. As for week number 4, this is going to be an interesting matchup. Colorado, of course, back into the Big 12 Conference. This will be their Big 12 opener. And there's a lot of festivities around this one. This game's already sold out. Of course, you got Coach Prime. You got Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. We've heard a lot about Colorado. Going to be a fun game. And out in Boulder, time is still TBD, but September 21st, week number 4, heading out to the mountains in altitude there in Boulder. And Jerry, I got to think this game with the offense is kind of different. I got a little bit of 2012 vibes. West Virginia, Baylor. West Virginia enters the conference. Yeah. It could be a high scoring kind of, your older brother's Big 12 kind of game. And so looking forward to watching this one on September 21st.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the Boulder Chamber of Commerce will do what Morgantown did for that 2012 game, because you could tell right when you were walking in or walking up to the stadium, wait, these people are being nice to us. What's going on here? Because we get all these, reports about how bad the West Virginia fans are and how hostile they can be. And we got nothing but, greeted. I was in, Baylor gear, and they're welcoming me to their tailgate, pregame tailgate stuff. So, yeah, I think it'll be fun. Colorado, obviously a former Big 12 team. We get to go back to Boulder. That's one of my favorite places to go, just in terms of a very scenic view. Man, what a place to sell, and I remember from their past Colorado media almanacs, they'd always have those mountains, somewhere either on the front or the back of their media almanac, because that's a great selling point. What a beautiful place to play. So that'll be a lot of fun, Justin. I've seen some great games up there. Hopefully this will be another one.
Folsom Field. It's a legendary place. And, of course, back in 1991, they had that big win over the defending Colorado national champion Colorado Buffaloes. Jeff Ireland, that big kick, of course, went on to have some great success in the NFL in the management role. But, yeah, looking forward to that game, September 21st. That's one definitely to circle on the road. If you can make it out for a road game, that's one to definitely go to. And then September 28th, which happens to be a really good day, Jerry. It's my birthday. BYU at McLean Stadium, which, of course, we saw them a couple years ago. And really looking forward to this game. This is going to be the gold-out game. And so looking forward to this one at the end of September against BYU. You know, after a few games have kind of under our belt, this is week 5, game 5 for Baylor. And we could see, we don't know what BYU, obviously a part of the storyline here is Gary Bohannon, really well respected. I know our Baylor fans just loved everything he did to help, lead us to a Big 12 championship a couple years ago there. He could be a quarterback for the opponent. And so we'll see how it all shakes out. But Baylor versus BYU. And really, Jerry, I think this is a budding rivalry. This can be a rivalry between these two programs, and with a lot of respect. I know Dave has got a lot of respect for Kalani and the coaching staffs on both sides.
Yeah, and that's a great fan base too. They're passionate about their team, but they, again, first time up there, man, they really welcomed you. And I do think this is a budding rivalry. Maybe not just in football either, because I think I could see this in basketball as well. So, yeah, I think this is a fun one. It seems like there's always storylines with these BYU games, and I won't get into some of that in the past. But, yeah, it just seems like there's always something to kind of sink your teeth into in these BYU games.
So that's September 28th. That's week 5. And then week 6 leads us up north to Ames, Iowa. Jack Trice Stadium taking on Iowa State. And never easy to go up there. I can remember back about a decade ago, we got our first win in Ames against Iowa State in the Big 12 Conference. But looking forward to this game. And that's kind of the first six weeks there, Jerry. I know Iowa State always a competitive team. Physical, and we're going to see a lot of that with teams like Air Force, Utah, BYU, and Iowa State, maybe one of the most physical teams in the entire Big 12 Conference.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a great matchup. And like you said, it always or traditionally has been a great matchup. And Baylor, they have struggled in Ames, but you have won up there, and you've won up there fairly recently as well. So it's not one that you go into thinking, well, there's just no way we're going to win here. I think it's a tough game. That's a very tough road game. I look at Utah, Iowa State, West Virginia. Those are really tough road games. So, again, if you can steal one or two of those, that would be huge, because that could really, kind of set yourself up again for a great season if you can win a big road game like that.
And then we finally get a bye week. We got 2 bye weeks this season, so you can rest and pause. But I know our team will definitely need it after 6 straight games. And as we said, a lot of physical teams in that first stretch where you're going to get some bumps and bruises to kind of, calm yourself down and rest up a little bit for the second half of the season. The second half of the season does get underway out in Lubbock, Texas at Jones AT&T Stadium against Texas Tech on Saturday, October 19th. Another program, another school that's a really good rivalry for Baylor. I don't care what Baylor and Texas Tech are playing, what sport it is. Yeah, that's a rivalry game, and looking forward to this one in mid to late October.
Yeah, obviously a series that for years and years was a neutral site game, either at the Cotton Bowl or AT&T Stadium. I think it's great having them back on campus. I as much as I like neutral site games, particularly at NFL stadiums like that, I like having those games back on campus. Lubbock is a tough place to play. Again, those fans, they are very passionate, and they will let you know how they feel about their team. They will let you know how they feel about you as well. So that'll be a fun one. Lots of reunions there as well with Joey McGuire, the head coach there, and several Baylor connections on his staff. So that'll be a fun one to kind of start off the second half of the season. I like having that bye right before there, though, Justin, having that bye week going into Lubbock.
Always look forward to going out to Texas Tech. I just don't love those tortillas they throw. I love the energy, and I don't care what the fans say. I mean, there's places throughout the country, they're just fans, and that's short for fanatic. So it doesn't really matter what they say. But the tortillas, I could do without. But any event, won't have to worry about that the next week when we come back home. Oklahoma State on October 26th. This is the homecoming game. So really looking forward to this one. It's Stripe Out McLean, so you're wearing your green or gold based on your sections. Looking forward to this game. Oklahoma State, not necessarily AKA a rival, but we've had a lot of really good games. It's really been competitive. It's been back and forth through the years. I can think about some big games at McLean Stadium, some big wins there as well in Stillwater. And so always look forward to Baylor and Oklahoma State hitting the gridiron. Not too far away, two of that schools that have been the Big 12 Conference for a long time, Jerry.
Yeah, and I think this is a really critical two-game stretch, Justin. When you look at it, like I said, you're just kind of starting the second half, and you got, two home games back-to-back with Oklahoma State and then TCU the following week. So I look at this as a very pivotal stretch for this team and what it can do, whether it's getting to a bowl game or whatever. I think this is a big two-game stretch, trying to – I would say your goal going in is to win them both, obviously, but I think you need to win one of these two to kind of keep some momentum going. If you've, had a good start up to this point, I think you need to kind of keep that momentum going.
Oklahoma State enters the season ranked 17th in the country. Baylor, as far as the schedule, when it starts the season, has 3 ranked opponents on it. We'll see how it shakes out. I would anticipate that to be even more as the year goes on. Of course, 6 home games and 6 road games in 2024. Another home game coming up here against TCU. That's game number 9 for them on the season. So Baylor versus TCU at home. And this one's going to be a really, really special night. The 13-14 teams come back, celebration of the back-to-back Big 12 champion Baylor Bears. Of course, the first Big 12 championship back in 2013. Bryce Petty leading the team with so many dudes, so many studs on that team. Looking forward to those guys coming back. But they did the unthinkable, right? You go from 13, you win the title, but you go back-to-back. We know how difficult that is to get to the top of the mountain, but to stay up there, they did that. Back-to-back champs coming back home on November 2nd for the rivalry game, Baylor versus TCU.
Yeah, this one's big, Justin. I mean, I guess you can say they're all big, but this one to me is probably one of the biggest games of the year. And obviously, I think honoring those teams, the 13 and 14 back-to-back conference championship teams, that's huge. And those guys, I mean, they really. What a great run. Both 11-win seasons, had never had that before. And, for both of those teams to win 11 games, unbelievable teams. And usually when you're talking about 2014, all you have to mention is 61-58. And isn't it kind of cool that we're playing that team that we came back and beat 61-58 back in 2014. So that'll be a cool thing, reuniting with the Horned Frogs here at McLean Stadium. 10 years later and trying to win a big game here at home.
Got it right? I mean, you're going to do the reunion game. You're going to bring back the 13-14 teams. You're going to bring them back for the TCU game. That's the game that meant the most to them. And you think about the rivals and really at that time, Baylor, TCU, those were the 2 best teams, right? Texas was down a little bit. TCU was that legit team there in 2014. And so, yeah, this is a game that, obviously for the football program, every game means the same, but for the fan base, the TCU game means a little bit extra. And so, and the same can be said for those 13-14 guys, right? You think about what game they want to come back to, what game they want to see a win. It's against TCU, and we'll see a great game. I'm looking forward to that one on November 2nd at McLean Stadium. And then we have our second and final bye week of the regular season. And so once again, you go 6 games bye week, 3 games bye week, and then you're heading to Morgantown, West Virginia on November 16th, a place that has not been so friendly to the Baylor Bears in football. We've had some great games there and some really close games that could have went our way. We haven't gotten off the schneid, so to speak, just yet to beat West Virginia in Morgantown in football. But what better way to do it than this fall in 2024 on November 16th.
Yeah, you had talked about it earlier. That first Big 12 game for West Virginia back in 2012. Man, what a shootout! Nick Florence was coming on the heels of Robert Griffin's Heisman Trophy. He's now the quarterback, and they're going up there first Big 12 game for West Virginia, and it was a 70-63 shootout. I mean, unbelievable game. Terrence Williams set all kinds of records. Nick Florence had a great game. Just defenses, neither one of them could stop the other one. So, but yeah, it's been a tough place, obviously, for Baylor to play. Haven't won there yet, but yeah, like you said, no better time than now. And this will kind of start that last stretch. And again, I do like, I think the conference office did a great job in setting up those buys. A buy before you go to Lubbock and a buy before you go to Morgantown. Those are great times to kind of, rest and relax, get ready to go, and then play a very tough game on the road.
And then the following week, the final road game of the regular season, you head down to Houston, Texas to take on the Houston Cougars. And, I think we talked about this last year on Inside Baylor Sports, but just love getting Houston back in the Big 12 Conference. Just makes a lot of sense. A 3-hour drive there, but Baylor versus Houston to the second to the last week of the season here in game number 11.
Yeah, first conference football game that Baylor's played in Houston in almost 30 years. 95 would have been the last time because they would rotate Houston and Rice each year. So this would be their first conference game, football game in Houston since 95. So that'll be fun. And this one is another one, Justin. We don't talk about it enough, but old Southwest Conference rival. This in-state, this could be a budding rivalry as well. When we look at in basketball, Houston's really kind of blowing and going in basketball, so it'd be good to build it there. But I think in football too, as Houston builds its program back up, I think this could be a really good rivalry as well.
Yeah, and then week number 12, game number 12, I should say, for the Baylor Bears, that's against Kansas Jayhawks, a much improved football program, got some good momentum the last couple seasons. That'll be senior day, the final game of the season in the regular season for the Baylor Bears, November 30th. So looking forward to that one to finish out the season. And really, Jerry, as a whole, 6 home, 6 on the road, 6 at home. A lot of different styles. You're going to see some different teams. They're going to kind of ground and pound. You're going to see some spread teams, a lot of variety. And that just speaks to the Big 12 Conference. We know how competitive. Many people have said it's the most competitive from top to bottom football league in America. And we're going to see that throughout the season here with these 12 games.
Yeah, and I don't like that we're not playing some of those league newcomers, but I like the schedule. I like the fact that we're playing all the Texas teams, this year and a couple of them on the road. But I like that we're playing all of the Texas teams. I know that won't be the case every year, but I do like that we're playing them this year. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this league is ridiculous. I think maybe a couple of years ago, people would thought, oh, Texas and OU are leaving. That's the death of the Big 12. No, it's not. With what Brett Yormark has done and bringing in now 8 new teams over the last couple of years, I don't know that the league has been stronger. Maybe there's not that, one, bell cow program or whatever, but you've got 16 that are all really good. And I think you're right. I think it's the most balanced of the Power 4 conferences. And it's one of those where, yeah, Utah's the favorite, but I think you could see any number of 5-6 teams win the league this year. And I think it'll be fun, Justin.
Yeah, there's no, a lot of cliches you could throw out there. Every game matters, no games off. I mean, that's really true to this. And I don't know that the conference has been this strong from top to bottom in a numbers game in a very long time. You think about bowl eligible teams this year. I mean, you could be talking 10, 11, maybe even 12 teams that are bowl eligible. So really looking forward to all that. But Jerry, I mean, heck, you got a gold out, you got a stripe out. You got reunions, multiple teams coming back. I mean, just a lot of excitement around the home schedule, and really looking forward to getting underway. But Tarleton, Air Force, BYU, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Kansas. I mean, that's a really strong home schedule And it's a schedule that you're going to want to come out only six days, right? 6 games in a 52-week year. You got 52 Saturdays, just 6 of them. You're going to want to be there for every game at McLean Stadium.
And that'll be a fun one. That last one, like you mentioned, Senior Day against a very good Kansas team. I think we're playing 3 of the best or 3 conference favorites all here at McLean Stadium. When you think about Utah, not a conference game, but the conference favorite. And then Oklahoma State, I think, is one of those teams that could compete for it. And in Kansas as well has been kind of seen as a dark horse. So these are all good teams that you're going to be playing at McLean Stadium. So I think it's a great home schedule, great schedule overall. Obviously don't play Utah here, but get 2 of those teams at McLean Stadium. So I think it's a great schedule, Justin. I think it'll be fun.
New uniforms as well. You get to see those. It's going to be fun to see, kind of what it shakes out, game 1 to 12 and how everything lines up there. New video boards. Really looking forward to that. We're going to be able to do some things we've never been able to do. A new hospitality suite in the berm. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's really shaping up to be an exciting season. As we said, the offseason, the hype was great, and everybody's getting to August 31st. Then it's all about the games, right? And we're going to jump now into impact guys. And there's a lot of ways you can go here, Jerry. We'll start with the defense. I'm going to give you – Jerry's going to take 3 impact players. And once again, we could pick 20, 25, 30 different players on this team, but shaping it down to just 3. So Jerry will give us 3 guys to watch on defense for the season.
Yeah, and I think an obvious one is a newcomer that just got here this year, has made a big impact in the spring, is already kind of a team leader. But Keaton Thomas, linebacker, came from junior college, and has stepped right in there with Matt Jones at the 2 inside linebacker spots. I think he's a guy, Justin, that could make a really big difference. I think he's going to make a lot of tackles, but I think he's a guy too that you could see on some blitzes, that you could see in coverage. I mean, he's a guy I think that can do it all. He's built kind of like a running back, 6'2", 224. But yeah, I think he could make a real big impact this year. He's a guy that I could see having a great season. My number 2 is Jackie Marshall, who happens to be 0. But Jackie obviously has had some injury issues. His 4th year at Baylor, but has had a really hard time, getting on the field, but, got hurt last year and was not able to play. But, at one point he was at the jack or outside linebacker spot, is now at more of the flex end. So I think he is a guy. I think you're going to see him making a lot of plays. He's a playmaker type. Think about him being a linebacker now moving to defensive end. I think he's going to be coming off the edge a lot. He's a guy that's going to be getting in the backfield a lot. And, I'm excited to see him in action because, again, we really haven't seen him play a lot. So, I think he's a guy that I'm really looking to. And then I'm going to go number 3. I'm going to go with Caden Jenkins. Obviously a guy that had a great true freshman season, freshman All-American, and, really made a big impact. I think, back to that, Cincinnati game, just a lot of games that he played that he was our biggest playmaker last year on defense and just really made a difference in a lot of games. A year older, at that cornerback position. Now I will say, I think probably a lot of teams are going to throw away from him because they saw what he did last year. But that could open things up for either Chateau Reed or Snacks Johnson on the other side. So, but yeah, I look for Caden to have a big year, and he's a guy that, again, I mentioned that on Keaton that he could come on blitzes. I think you could even see Caden coming on some cornerback blitzes. He's a guy that can really make plays, really makes a difference, and so those are my 3 on the defensive side: Keaton Thomas, Jackie Marshall, and Caden Jenkins.
Love those picks, Jerry. Those are tremendous picks. And I'll say this much too. Caden Jenkins just has a knack for finding the football. Almost like in soccer, there's certain people that can find the back of the net and score. Right. He just kind of finds a way to get to the football. So even if they throw away from him, he's going to get in the play somehow. And you think about, what he did against UCF and that great run back for a touchdown there. So love the picks there from Jerry. Once again, we could rattle off a bunch of guys, but 3 guys just to kind of put down on your note sheet as you come to the games this fall. Jackie Marshall, number 0. So as Jerry said, new number for him, did not play last year. So looking forward to him on that defensive line. Keaton Thomas, number 11, linebacker. And then Caden Jenkins, no longer number 19, looking for number 8 out on the field. So it's going to take a little bit of an adjustment for the fans to find them out there, but that's the defensive guys, and looking forward to seeing each of those guys. All right, let's move it over to offense. Jerry, you know I love some offense, right? Scoring some points, getting up and down the field. And in order to do that, you got to have a quarterback. And we know quarterback is the most important position in all of sports. And so DeQuan Finn has to be one of the impact guys. Of course, the starting quarterback for your Baylor Bears, 6'2", 206, from Martin Luther King High School out of Detroit, Michigan, 6th-year quarterback. And DQ, this is a guy that, you know, on paper, we have to see it in games. But on paper, you think about what he did at Toledo and the speed he has at nearly 22 miles per hour. He has a chance to be as dynamic of a quarterback that we've seen in almost a decade. You think about like Seth Russell. It's been a long time since you've seen a guy who, you know, has the top end speed like a DeQuan Finn. And so really looking forward to seeing DeQuan out there on the field. I think he's shifty. Number 7 out there, coming in obviously his final season. He played in 45 games over 5 seasons, has a lot of experience, played against some Power 4 opponents, a lot of Big Ten competition. I think he's going to be a difference maker. I think he's going to be really fun to watch. So keep your eyes on number 7 all season long. We'll move up a number and to number 6, one of his targets, one of the guys I think he'll be looking for. And you think about sure-handed, you think about a guy who can move the chains, it's going to be Ashton Hawkins. And also a guy that is familiar with Jake Spavital's offense, right? A guy that came from Texas State, a transfer, number 6, can move all the way around at wide receiver. But at the end of the day, in order to score points, you have to convert 3rd downs and 4th downs in some cases. And that's moving the chains. And so you got to have that guy who can get to the sticks. And so Ashton Hawkins, expecting a big season from him. And then, you know, hey, if you got your quarterback, you got your wide receiver, you're going to need some help on that offensive line. And looking at another transfer, a former Montana State Bobcat, Omar Egbedian, number 68 on that offensive line. I think he's going to be key this season. And so ultimately, you got 3 transfers there, 3 new players. Ashton Hawkins, number 6, DeQuan Finn, number 7, and number 68, Omar Egbedian on the offensive side of the ball, Jerry.
I mean, those are probably as good a picks as you could make. I'm not saying they're the best picks, but they're as good as you could make. So I'll give you some credit for that. No, those were great picks, Justin, and I like them. I think, you know, they're, like you said, we could probably rattle off 20 names on each side. You know, I think of like a Richard Reese. I look for him to really, you know, kind of come back into his own, you know, with what he showed 2 years ago as the Big 12 freshman offensive player of the year. I just think he's maybe a better fit in this offense. And then Michael Trigg would be another one that I would throw out there, the tight end transfer. So, but yeah, again, a lot of guys to pick from. You picked 3 newcomers, and I think all of those guys are going to make big impacts on this team.
Yeah, and Colton Grayson did a great job of breaking down the new numbers, but just super quick if you're catching up. Jackie Marshall, number 0, Michael Trigg, number 1, Matt Jones staying with number 2, Devin Bobby at 3, Monterey Baldwin wearing number 4, Garmin Randolph, he drops a 5. He's going with just straight single-digit 5 this year. Ashton Hawkins at 6, DeQuan Finn, like we talked about, at 7. Oh, by the way, from Michigan, of course, a Michigander like myself, so you know, us Michigan guys got to stay together here. But number 8, Caden Jenkins, as we said, Trevin Ma'ai at number 9. And, you know, some different numbers there. Steve Linton, 10, 11 for Keaton Thomas, and a bunch of other guys throughout the roster. Go check out BaylorBears.com, the roster, and you get your latest numbers there. So definitely got to buy a program, right? You got to get the program with all the roster movement these days. You got to have a program watching these games, or if you can't make it out, you got to have maybe ESPN.com or BaylorBears.com pulled up with a roster and looking at who's who. But as the season transpires, you'll get to know our Baylor Bears. All right, so you think about we talk about players. How about position groups? Do you have your eyes on a group or two this season for fans to keep an eye on that's going to be important for Baylor's season?
Well, and you mentioned, one name in the group that I'm going to talk about is the offensive line and Omar Agbedian. That's a group that, obviously struggled last year, had to play some younger guys, maybe as Dave Aranda has mentioned, maybe before they were ready. But those guys now are a year older, and they've been brought in 4, transfers from the portal, and then another one from JC. So, a lot of competition in those spots, but that's a group that I'm going to be looking at to see what a big jump they make this season. Even during fall camp, they made a big jump. That first scrimmage, the defense kind of dominated, overwhelmed the offense. 7 days later, in the second scrimmage of fall camp, offense looked really good. That was the big jump that offensive line made from week 1 to week 2, and they continue to get better, Justin. So I look for that offensive line group. Again, some new faces, some guys that were starting last year, Colton Price back at center, Alvin Ebasale at tackle. So you've got some, familiar faces, but then you've got some new ones coming in. Sidney Fugar is another one, the transfer from South Carolina. He's a guy that you'll see in there some. They've been really high on Ryan Lingell, a guy that's been around the program for a long time. I believe he's played in 5 games, but he's a guy that is really impressed both in spring and fall, and has a chance to start there at guard. So, that's what I'm looking for, Justin, a big improvement from that offensive line.
Hey, I'm looking forward to offense. So I love your pick there and kind of what to look and keep an eye on those 5 guys in the line. A lot of games, can be won in the trenches, but also some games, especially with the up-tempo spread offense, can be won down the field or on the edges, right, in the corners and whatnot. So I'm looking at the wide receivers. There's 14 guys that make up the wide receiver group. That's a lot of wide receivers. But this is a group, you think about the likes of a Monterey Baldwin, a Ashton Hawkins, a Ketron Jackson, or better known as just Tron. That'll be easy for the pronunciation change on the first name. You can just call him Tron. Hal Presley, Jonah Burton. I know we've seen him before. Jamal Bell, we could see him in the return game. Josh Cameron, another physical wide receiver. And you think about some guys like Cameron Bonner, Micah Gifford, Jaden Porter, some other guys there. Just a really deep group. And I think you need to have that, right? For 12 games, some guys, every once in a while are going to get bruised up here and there. It's just part of playing a violent game called football. But the wide receivers, I'm really excited about this group. I think they can help lead the Bears to a really successful season. So that's a group that I'm keeping my eye on all season long. And a lot of highlights, hoping for a lot of highlights there. So that's that piece. All right, Jerry. So we think about, you think about the season, right? Any season, you hear it from a lot of coaches a lot of times. They say, hey, get to 6 games or get to 6 wins, right? You get to bowl eligibility, you get to 6 wins, and then why not 8, right? Why not 10? Why not 12? Whatever. Like that can be goals for teams. Every team, no matter what the goals across the country, to get to the 6-win mark, get to bowl eligibility, and that can be a great goal from you from the start, from the outset. Obviously, you look at the schedule, you look at different pieces with the Big 12 Conference. And what I would say to the fans is I expect a lot of close games for the entire Big 12 Conference. But you think about this schedule, there's going to be a lot of really competitive games, a lot of really close games, a lot of fourth quarter games. This reminds me of Baylor men's basketball in the basketball conference. A lot of games that come down to the final 5 minutes in basketball, in this case, the final quarter of football. So one of those situations where you're either at your TV at home for those road games or in the seats at McLean Stadium for the fourth quarter, you don't want to get up, okay? Bathroom breaks, food, no. Eyes on the field, eye on the TV, because I anticipate a lot of close games coming down to the fourth quarter, which means turnovers could be crucial, 3rd down pickups, 4th down pickups, the field goal game. I think it's going to be a lot of excitement, but a lot of really close games throughout the season. So that's something I got my eye on. And want to say that to the fans. I got a sense of a lot of close games throughout the season. And the hope, obviously, is Baylor can come up victorious, winning a lot of those close games. And, of course, that was one of the keys to Baylor's greatest season ever on paper back in 2021. They won a lot of those close games. If you can win a lot of close games, you're going to have a successful season.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. I was thinking back to, since we're celebrating the 50-year anniversary of that 74 team, I remember covering Coach Taff, as a very young beat writer, and he used to talk about, they might be, say, 3-8, 4-7, something like that. But he'd say, "Hey, but we were an eyelash away from being 8-3," and so and that is the difference in those close games. If you can win the close games, you can maybe go 9-3, 10-2. But if you lose those close games and you don't win your share of the close games, that's how you wind up with a losing record. So win your close games, get in contention, and you can really make a difference. You got to win the close games, though, or at least win your share of those close games. Because like you said, Justin, 9 conference games, we're actually playing 10 conference teams. You expect most of those to kind of go down to or you hope at least that they will go down to the fourth quarter, and whether you win or lose.
Could be a lot of fun to watch. Once again, those fourth quarters, you heard it here first. Get all your popcorn, get all your food, buckle up in your seat to watch those fourth quarters. You're not going to want to be going up and getting in the concession stands. I know that much when I'm watching games with my wife. If it's in the fourth quarter, sorry, where you got to get your food request in before the fourth quarter. We're not going to get food in the fourth quarter, so it's going to be a lot of fun, Jerry. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. It all starts Saturday. Football season is here. It's finally upon us.
I'm excited, man. Let's go 1-0 this week. I know that's kind of been a common theme in the past. Let's go 1-0 this week. Let's go 1-0 about 12 weeks and see where we are at the end of the year.
That'll do it for this bonus edition of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for tuning in. For Jerry Hill, I'm Justin Hoff, and Sick 'em Bears.
Sick 'em Bears.